Hello and welcome to PvP, formerly known as Gamerbait. Yes, the debate show where we take two of our hosts and put them in a 5-question extravaganza. I'm your host, Corey, Mr. 2-0, and I have my two I have my two competitors here, also the hosts of the other show. I have David.
What up?
And I have Jeremy.
Something without wings cannot fly.
What?
Helicopters.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a while. But yeah, this is PvP. This is the debate show. If you watched any of the previous episodes, we used to call it gamer bait, which was really close to a term that teenage boys do, and it did not fly. So we switched the name. Thank you everyone that voted and everyone that gave name suggestions. That was really awesome of you. But yeah, if you don't know, we take 5 topics. They are going to debate them. I am going to judge them and give them points. And at the end, we will have one winner. Gentlemen, are you ready? Because guess what? I said a half-hour show. We're going to make this a half-hour show. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right.
All right, let's do this. Jumping into the first topic. Now, Sony and Microsoft. We know Microsoft is trying to buy Activision and Blizzard, and Sony has been fighting them the entire way. Well, one of the most recent stories has been that Sony is worried Microsoft will sabotage Call of Duty because Microsoft has promised that it'll still come to Sony systems, but they think that'll hurt them. Is this a real thing to be worried about, or is this just another sour grapes from Sony? Go on, whichever guy wants to take it.
I'll hop in here first.
Okay.
All right.
Is this a real concern or sour grapes? I'm going to say it is mostly sour grapes.
Okay.
And that's just from the standpoint that like Sony understands that probably, I mean, of all systems, but definitely on Sony, COD's a major seller on their system. I know they bring in that license fee. They're confident. They want people to have a premium experience on their system, and they are fearful that Xbox, Microsoft is going to compromise that in some way. It might not be with accessibility to the game, but it may be with accessibility to certain features. It may be with crossover ability or different things like that. Of course, Microsoft, Xbox can say that that's not going to happen, but these corporations.
All right, I like that. 2 points. 2 points for that.
Yeah, I think that's the possibility. But also sour grapes. Sony's like, man, we missed out. We could have bought them. Instead, we bought the people that make Returnal. Nothing against Returnal. I'm just saying.
Could they have bought them? Could they?
I'm sure they could have put in a stake of which would help control Activision-Blizzard and not put them in a position where they're having to be at the whims of Microsoft Xbox, if they decide they want to do some jank stuff with the IP. There were definitely financial moves they could have made to protect themselves.
Another point for that one.
Okay, so a really big factor here is Activision, Blizzard. A lot of their stuff is more than just Call of Duty, right? And if they take away Call of Duty, they're also going to probably take away everything else. And they'll lose a lot of money that way. There's a report from Charlie Intel. I don't know who that is, but thank you. 42% of COD Warzone players are from PlayStation.
2 points, David.
25%
statistics. I like it.
Is Xbox. Okay, so sure, they could still sell it to PC players, if Xbox takes it away from PlayStation, through Xbox.
No, I do want to cut you off and say Microsoft has said they will not take it away. They have at least a 10-year contract that says we will keep it on all Sony systems. So in theory, that really shouldn't be a worry for Sony at this point, right?
Right. But Microsoft, Sony, they don't like each other. But Microsoft is all about money, and they will lose a lot of money just from Call of Duty if they take it away from PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a feeling it's a lot of sour grapes with a very 5% of Microsoft could take it away just to do it to them.
Okay, another point, David.
Yeah, I mean, there's the possibility of, you can not take the franchise away, but make it quote unquote impotent, right? There are some things you can take away to make the experience an inferior experience on Sony, while also saying, we gave you the game.
Like what, Jeremy?
In regards to different features you can do with Warzone, accessibility to Warzone, right? There may be certain effects or packs or whatever instances that you can do on the Xbox that you won't be able to do on PlayStation. Well, if people have the choice and we have, what'd you say, that 40 some odd percent on Sony PlayStation, 25% on Xbox, maybe they start migrating over. I mean, remember games like Warzone, Fortnite, all those things, those battle royales and stuff, they are technically free. I mean, you have to pay. Obviously, they have like Xbox Live Gold and all, but you don't have to pay for those in order to play those games now. So we could see a migration happen if it goes that way.
You're talking about like Call of Duty free or just on Game Pass?
Well,
Warzones are free.
Game Pass,
Yeah, that's
Warzones
already
are free.
free.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And what I'm saying is, you don't need an Xbox Live Gold or PlayStation Plus membership to play those.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it could be a thing of where they're like, hey, it's the more premium experience over here on Xbox. If I already have an Xbox or if I plan on getting one, I mean, look, the cost of entry in regards to accessing that game and that experience is free, and I'm getting a more premium one because Microsoft has loaded a bunch of things on the back end that maybe you don't get on the Sony experience. So I think that's a fear, right? The only thing is that, like, do we really expect that Xbox is going to do something like that, right? Like, would that be enough to shake and move people from one platform to another? You know what I'm saying? Is that enough? I don't know. I don't know if people are lining up to get. I don't know if people are lining up to get PlayStations for COD. Now, COD and PlayStation did have a lot of system-specific deals they had back in the day, right?
I remember, like,
specifically,
like Call of Duty stuff would come out first.
Like they had a Black Ops 3 edition, PlayStation PS4 or whatever, like, and all those different things. So they've had things that have kind of went that way before. Could Xbox be seeking to do some things like that, but then also cutting out some things on the back end to just make the experience less of a premium experience on Sony? It's a possibility.
Okay, another point, Jeremy. Good points.
That you bring that up, I didn't think about that. That's actually a good point, because just like PlayStation does with a lot of, what is that Avengers game? Like Spider-Man was only on PlayStation, right?
Yeah, Marvel's Avengers, right?
Point for you, David.
So Xbox could do the same thing. Not only because I forget what game it is or if it's still a thing, but like PlayStation got like DLC like a month before PC or Xbox. So they could just turn the tables on that and say, hey, we get the stuff a month early. You guys can get it later. But now they can add stuff to the Xbox and not give it to PlayStation. So they are being true. They're letting PlayStation keep the game.
Another point for that.
But like Jeremy stated, they're going to just downgrade the experience.
Right, exactly. I mean, for one, how long do we think it's going to be until we see a COD Gears of War mashup happen?
That'd be wonderful.
Where Marcus is in there and everyone else from Gears, and there's different. I mean, it obviously definitely happened. I mean, the other impetus I think on why like Sony may have fear of it is because it's two things. Sony's greedy. Sony's winning.
Yep.
So there's two things where it's like, they could do something to kind of compromise what we're able to do with this game. And also we want money, yum, 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 we want money, right? And there's the possibility of them having a little bit less of both of those. So, yes, there's the fears of it, but you have to think of how far would Xbox be willing to go in order to do that, right? We don't really have a real precedent for that in regards to like, well, how far are they willing to go? How far are they willing to do things? Now, there is a possibility of, I mean, are they going to do like a Bethesda, right? Like, are they going to do something like that, where Bethesda games all of a sudden either get preferential treatment or exclusive treatment on Xbox because they have kind of player ownership into them, right? I mean, that's a possibility. You just have to think something like COD isn't really in the forte of Microsoft. You think about the games they've produced and developed in the past, and that's not really their thing. Even Halo's it's not COD. It's never really been that. So, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
All right, David, do you have a last point on this?
No, I think I've said what I need to say.
I'm going to give you an extra point, David, because I really enjoyed the Avengers exclusivity about Spider-Man, because I think Sony has sour grapes because they've been doing this to Xbox for years.
Yeah.
Something I looked up was Street Fighter 4 had the most player base on Xbox 360. Street Fighter 5 comes out, and it's a PlayStation exclusive.
Right.
So
really, I did not know that.
That would have got you like 5 points. Anyone mentioned that? But
yeah,
that is true.
Sony's been doing this, and they're afraid it's going to happen to them.
Right. It's
We don't know.
It's kind of like karma. Who knew?
Kind of like karma. Let's move on, gentlemen. Speaking of Xbox, we have a Starfield release date. Speaking of Bethesda as well. It's set to come out September 6th, 2023, which is close. It's coming up, but it had a couple delays.
Yeah.
How big of a release is this for Microsoft? How big? You can rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 and then kind of bring your points up. I think Jeremy went first. David, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So when was the last Bethesda game released, really? It's been a while. And
76, right?
Which was god awful.
Their last by the main Bethesda group, right? Because they have a bunch of companies under them. But yeah, okay.
But I think it's like a 4 or 5 realistically.
Really?
It's been delayed already, so people are already expecting to probably be delayed again, and I don't see it exploding at all. And if it's anything like 76, people are just going to be disappointed.
Wow. I'll give you a point for trying, David.
You're welcome.
Jeremy?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this about a 7.
Okay.
And the reason why, which is really interesting, I'm going to go deeper into this. I give them a 7, and I also give a 7 to Bethesda because I think that this release is a referendum on both of them, right? The reason it's the biggest for Microsoft is because Microsoft spent all that money to acquire Bethesda, right? All that money, so it's got to pay off. And 2, we're losing faith in Microsoft Xbox to be able to shepherd good games to completion. So this is another example of, hey, this is a studio that has mostly put out successful games, not always good games, but successful games, right? Like financially successful. Like as much as 76 blows, it was financially successful. And so how do they work? What is Microsoft Xbox play into that, right? There's also the issue of what does Bethesda look like under Microsoft, right? So like I'm trying to think here. Like what are they like under Microsoft? So like, is it a matter of, hey, we're able to put up these games, they look great? Let's see.
David, you got something to cut in? He's kind of waffling here.
Yeah.
So who made Skyrim?
That's Bethesda.
It was Bethesda, so I was right. Okay. So that's going to make my statement even more concrete. Is a 5 or 6 because they have those and they're making another one eventually. People are going to be waiting for that. It's I don't see it being a take all or lose all situation.
Right.
I'll give you a point. For that.
But I do want to say that Jeremy did make some very good points saying that they bought this company and they're kind of both relying on it a little bit.
All right, then I'll give Jeremy another point.
Yeah, does
nice of you, David.
Right. Well, this is a referendum on like Bethesda. Like, does Bethesda have what it takes them to create a good game? They have supporting now, financial supporting from a bigger organization. Can they do it, or are we going to be stuck with? Is this a Star Wars or space version of Fallout 76? So they have as much to compete and live up to as Microsoft does. Is can we shepherd in a good, successful game? Right. It's going to be the same thing with the next Hellblade that comes out. Can Microsoft Xbox shepherd a game developer that is proven to be competent at their job? Can they do that? Because they've screwed up Halo. Right? Can they do that? With these
are you guys worried about Starfield at all?
I would say no.
Yeah.
Simply because I don't really care that much.
Same.
Okay. I definitely thought the numbers were kind of low for both of you. Jeremy, you kind of brought it up a little bit more than David. I feel like this is a big deal for both of them because when's the last time Microsoft had a AAA title? It's been, I believe,
a minute.
It's been over a year. It's been since Halo. So this is their first AAA title in over a year that's coming out, or almost 2 years at this point. And it's like, what what does the future of Microsoft hold? Because they have all these RPG companies. And also, like you mentioned a little bit, Jeremy, Bethesda, the last game they made was 76. It was not good. So they're following that up. If this game is not good, are we looking at a BioWare situation where Microsoft bought a company when it was kind of going downhill and they don't make those classic great games anymore? So I think this is hugely important to both of them. So I'm going to dock you both a point.
Sounds good. I like it.
All right, let's move on, gentlemen. E3, we love talking about E3.
Yes, you do.
No one more than me. I don't think you guys care quite as much, but humor me here. There's been a report that the big three, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, will not be attending in any capacity E3 this year. Should E3 just die already?
I guess. David, you went first on my last one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Should E3 die already? I will say no. Ooh. I think any publicity, anything that celebrates games, a industry that is so exponentially profitable yet still has very low exposure from a media standpoint, I think anything that they do is good. So I think E3 would be a positive, right?
Okay.
Just pivot it to smaller things. Make it more indie centric. Make it more medium game centric. It doesn't have to be blockbuster.
I'll give you a point for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's what you can do with E3. Just don't completely get away with it or away from it. Find a niche. Maybe concentrate a little bit more towards PC. Maybe do that.
Okay. David.
Okay, so he brought up a point I was going to do. If the
that was a good point.
The big three aren't there, that gives a huge opportunity for these smaller companies and people to show off their stuff. So like he was saying, make it more like indie based, or not indie but not AAA based. Mm-hmm. Now that the big three aren't there, they're not taking over the humongous crowd. It's like going to like Comic-Con, and Stan Lee was at Comic-Con here a couple years before he passed, and that line was 3 or 4 hours long.
Right.
Do you know how long the other famous people's lines were? Like half an hour. So if you get rid of these big ones, these little guys can come in and have a better opportunity for themselves. So I agree. Like I don't think it's washed. I think E3 should stay. I know I've never watched it personally, but it's always packed there. Any clips I've seen from E3, it's just full.
Right. Do the big three owe it to like people like us and to fans to go to E3? Is that something that, I know they're not required to go, but it should be something like, hey, we're going to go because our fans obviously want to see it?
I think they should be forced to if they don't do their own thing.
Oh, wow. You know what, Dave? That's moxie. I'm giving you 2 points. This should be
because this sounds like Nintendo has their Nintendo whatever, right?
2 points for that. That's
Xbox and PlayStation both have their own stuff.
That's
and
communism.
they release and show other minor stuff at their shows, but if they're not showing their stuff at their own thing, show us at someone else's thing. Because if you're not showing us what you have planned, if you don't show us what we are expected, if you don't show us why we are giving you our money, people are eventually going to stop investing in you.
I think
so. You're thinking it's like a long-term, like
it's a long-term.
Yeah, it's okay now, but in 5 years, people aren't going to necessarily think, oh, Nintendo's the biggest company because they're not at E3 anymore.
Right.
Okay, I'll give you another point for that.
Yeah, I do think in instances like possibly like on the Nintendo where it's more of like, it's a quote unquote foreign entity, right? They don't have as much of a ground base or ground presence here in the U.S. Something like E3 is a benefit as an opportunity for them. But the other ones, I mean, they're doing their showcases, they're doing their own thing. I say, hey, let them stay out. They suck up air. Mm-hmm. Give it to the more medium developers, and give it to someone like a Devolver and like Paradox and like all these other places that make like really good games and put out there for people to enjoy and like give them the light and let it shine and let E3 kind of pivot into that. Let us have access on these with these companies and these games that usually don't have that type of access, that usually aren't able to share their games the way they would like to share them, right? And then welcome in those other like third-party developers. I know we all hate Ubisoft. Bring, have them there. I know we all hate EA. They do their own thing. Bring them in there. You know what I'm saying? Like let them do their thing. The big three can do whatever they want. You know what I'm saying? But like, there's plenty of space, and I think E3 needs to pivot its way it's thinking from the big three, the big console. They've got to be there to like having it be a lot more third party centric, having it be a lot more PC gamer centric, right? I mean, like GDC is there for them, but that's not really accessible to your average gamer in regards to like paying attention to it. There's also a lot of technical things there for game developers and stuff like that. Like let E3 kind of be the pathway for that, the conduit for good conversation and experiencing these games.
Yeah, great points. I couldn't agree more with both of you. It seems fair. Yeah. The bigger guys go away, the tiny guys get to shine. So unless you guys have a final point to make, I'm okay to move on.
I do want to make one more.
Okay.
So I just looked it up. Just to have a booth at E3 is $30,000. Okay.
It's expensive.
And they have all these shows and whatever.
Statistics.
Who knows how much it costs to have a trailer of your game shown on the big screen or whatever? And people like the creator of Omno, amazing game. It was just one guy just doing everything. So I doubt he had the extra money to send off to E3 to have a trailer for them. But
okay, so to go against both your points, then a game like Omno should be celebrated and looked at, correct?
Yeah,
isn't it? And kind of like maybe PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo gave them a chance because that guy can't afford it by himself. So
right.
in those big companies they're able to showcase his tiny game.
Right. What I was going to get at, if these prices are that and the big three aren't ever going to show up again and the prices can like drop or something, we'll have better chances of having people that don't have, $30,000 sitting around.
Okay.
If it costs $10,000,
right? Like
more people will have that.
The better benefit of rather than just having, a trailer of your game be shown at a showcase as Xbox or PlayStation, being able to have a booth, a place set up where you can have people come out, see the game, experience the game, have game journalists there, games writer, people have more hands-on experience with the game. That'd also be beneficial for it, right? Especially with something like Honor that's a platformer, has a certain type of feel that you need to do. And any other kind of game like that, like being able to get in front of eyeballs, that strength of word of mouth, right? There's been games that blew up that had no trailers. How many trailers did Valheim have, right? How many trailers did something like Undertale have, like in regards to these showcases? Like it was word of mouth, people playing the games and getting out there and it kind of becoming this whole firestorm of, hey, I want to check this out. That's what helped propel the games and made them to be critical financial successes that they were.
Okay.
Great points by both of you.
Okay. Done.
Moving on.
Okay.
As you guys know, I'm a big proponent of VR gaming. I can't make it my main gaming method, though. I don't know what it is, but I need to know, look into your crystal ball. In the future, is VR gaming the true king of the hill when it comes to a platform or the type of gaming that you're doing? And can it? If it's not, then how can it get there?
I don't think it will be the king of gaming systems the way that it is now. If it can evolve into something like, what is that movie, Ready Player One?
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole universe and everything. I think it could then, but I don't think we have the technology to do that right now. Because my son was actually playing it a lot today, and he's playing these games. You have to like run around and jump, and he's running into things. Like I don't have a mansion with a 20-foot room. You know, so we need to evolve it into a place where you can do all the things he's doing, but you physically don't have to move. And you also have to imagine how many gamers there are with disabilities, and those disabilities range everywhere. You see, there's people with no hands I'll give you controls. 2 points for that. Like there's at least from what I've seen, I haven't really dug into it. There's no controllers for those kind of people. So
good points.
There's nowhere nowhere for them to go. They're going to stay on Xbox and PC because they have the required gaming controllers of their needs.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say that I don't see it being the king of the gaming, and like you mentioned, accessibility is one. I think just infrastructure in place. Like the cost of having and playing VR is more than just the device itself. You got to have the space, right? And you got to have plenty of space.
Point for that.
You've got to be in a place where like a lot of people are they going to be staying home. We talk about core gaming, console gaming, yada yada yada. The fastest and has been the fastest component of growing has been mobile gaming. So people want an experience they can take with them, right? VR is not there yet. And the investment you have to make from a infrastructure standpoint, from the customer, the investment you have to make from a technology, parts, silicon, all the different things you need to put into it to make it work standpoint, from a manufacturer standpoint, it's too great. And then you also have to figure out the platform things, right? I think as far as like accessibility of some stuff, Facebook Meta screwed up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, people don't want to have to use Facebook in order to, use their VR or anything like that. So, that needs to get straightened out. Also support from distributors or, developers. That's been lacking. We want more of that. It's been getting a little bit better, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. And when 90% of the releases that come out a year aren't compatible with VR, then, it leaves a hole. So I don't know if that's something that can be solved in the eventual 5, 10, 15 years for VR to be the king of gaming, so to speak. I still think those experiences are going to be either preferred console, where it's a bit less cumbersome, or mobile, where I can go someplace and I can experience games on the go when I have time, because we're busier than ever as well. So,
okay, so the future you envision, mobile is a much greater proponent of everyday gaming than even consoles at this point.
Yeah. You think of like
I'll give you a point for that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
You think of like the bare bones peripheral, which is like super popular now, and a bunch of other things, right? Like they're going to become just more popular and accessible. People are going to be trying to figure out how to use their mobile devices to have semi-premium to premium gaming experiences, because they're always on the go, they're always moving. And that's going to end up pushing people to leave something like VR behind. And I'm thinking of something of a VR like an Oculus Quest 2. I'm not even thinking about the more powerful things where you have to be tethered to something and then you're even more restricted, right? So I think that's just where we're going, essentially, Okay. And I think things like the Steam Deck and the Avio or whatever that was, that's the other thing, right? I think those are indicators. They're becoming popular. They are more expensive premium quality, but I mean, think about how much you have to pay for a VR headset, like a quality headset, right? It's comparable in price. So I think that's where it's going.
Good points. I think you kind of overestimated how hard it is to get into VR gaming with something like Meta Quest 2 being $400. That's equivalent to a regular system. So you could easily get that instead of a system if you wanted to. But
right.
That's just my thought.
The difference it's $400 to get into like a Meta Quest 2 or whatever, and buy games that way. It's $450, $480 maybe to get into a Steam Deck. And I think one, you're going to probably end up having a lot more opportunities to enjoy than the other.
Okay. David, any counters to all that?
Yes. He did make a good point with mobile gaming. So we've had Game Boys since, what was the first one released? 88? 89, something like that.
Sure.
The early 90s at the latest. And we're here in the 2020s and we see where it is. We have the Switch, the Steam Deck, the Avio, whatever he said. And then we have our phones, mobile gaming, like a stupid,
ball sort. Yep.
Crash and Legends and whatever, Angry Birds. And that's over a course of 30 years.
Right.
So I don't see VR getting amazing for 30 years.
You don't see it?
Yeah.
You're saying that it will be amazing in 30 years because of what happened to these?
It could be, but so I think it might take the route at least in advancement as mobile gaming, starting with the Game Boy, and now we have all what we have.
I'm gonna give you 2 points for that. I really like that example because VR is such in its infancy right now.
Yeah,
not
it
counting
came out
the
early
Nintendo-
2000s, late 2000s.
Yeah, not counting the Nintendo one in the 90s. Like,
Right.
you're looking at like technically the Game Boy of the VR system. So in 30 years,
I mean,
what does that look like?
I don't think that's wholly fair, right?
Maybe not, but it is a good comparison in my mind.
You got like what HoloLens, the Google glasses, and the Nintendo, like the idea of using peripherals in the VR thing to kind of have these experiences. That's been prevalent. That's been, I mean, we're saying like what 2000s. I mean, that started what 90s going into 2000s. We're in. I mean, you're saying like right now, like, well, it started in the 2000s. It's 2023. It's been 23 years.
So we got 10 years.
So I mean, you know, it's.
I'm gonna take away a point, Jeremy. I don't think you're seeing the bigger picture here, because technically the Game Boy, there was stuff before the Game Boy in terms of mobile. There was the little Game & Watch toys. There was other
like
things
VR, right? We're talking not mobile, VR emulation, right?
I know, and I know you say VR was there before, but that was super infancy. That was just ideas and just barely put together. We're talking about
what is infancy compared to super infancy? That doesn't stack up with me. What's infancy?
I'm saying that when you think of the dawn of VR, you think of the original Oculus Rift, which is no more than 5 to 10 years old. Like, yes, there was other things that tried it beforehand, but you're looking at Oculus Rift, in my mind, is the dawn of VR gaming.
Okay, what was the Nintendo one?
Just like when you look, yes, but just like when you look at the Game Boy, that's the dawn of mobile gaming. Even though there was other things like the Game & Watch or the little small electronic toys. Yes, those are mobile and they're gaming, but the dawn of mobile gaming was technically the Game Boy. So it's a good argument, but I don't agree with it. I'm sorry.
Because I say everyone just laughs at the Virtual Boy.
Yes, that was the dawn of VR, I would 100% already agree with Jeremy. But I don't see it that way. That was an experiment that failed.
Okay.
We're going to move on, guys, to the last topic of the night. It is the mystery topic. So you guys had no chance to prepare. But I think you'll have a pretty good answer. And the first person to say their answer, I will give them a free point just because of how hard it is to think of it off the top of your dome. What is the best controller of all time?
GameCube.
All right, expand.
Okay, so going from the N64 controller to the GameCube controller was huge. And people to this day, you can buy a GameCube controller for your Switch.
Oh, great point. 2 points.
What other controller does that? Even all the PlayStation controllers, they're pretty much the same, but they just add a little bit each time. Like, what can we do better? Like the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 5, the buttons are the same, but the feel of it is slightly different. Now they have like these little screens in them. They have these extra buttons that aren't start and select. They're not envisioning anything. Nintendo is like, oh, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try this. It's stuck with GameCube. Like who liked the Wiimote? Who likes the Switch controllers? You know, people, they have these options for the Switches because not many people are fans of the Switch controllers besides kids that it takes up their whole hand.
I didn't ask you to dog any other controllers, David. I'm going to take away one for that.
You got it.
Jeremy, do you have a favorite controller of all, the best controller, not your favorite, the best controller of all time?
It might seem like it's out of left field. I don't think so. I think the best controller of all time is the original Controller S for the original Xbox.
I saw that coming, and I don't know why.
Now,
I did, yeah.
Now, why is this? Well, Xbox has essentially stuck with that design since they had it because it was so comfortable. And not only that, a lot of other top-rated controllers from various different game manufacturers have closely emulated the body style of that controller, right? When you think of like the Steam controller, when you think of the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is a great controller, by the way. Blasphemy from David saying that they don't have any good controllers.
Oh, true.
I mean, just the way.
I was just the little stick ones. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, the way
Joy-Cons.
the Joy-Cons.
Okay, thank
The
you.
way
thank
that
you.
the controller S has like impacted, and you see it like proliferate in regards to like proliferate in regards to like people are using it. People are taking the core design and then making their changes to try to make it unique to theirs. I think speaks to just how comfortable it is, how much people have adapted to it. Like this is pretty much what it is, right? There's Sony's DualSense controllers, there's whatever Nintendo does, and then there's however many variations and adaptations of the original controller S. So I think the controller S hands down wins it as best controller. I mean,
I'll give you another point. It's a great controller. It's a great controller. Dave, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Now, do you think maybe the GameCube is looked at so fondly because of every controller that came after it has been so poor? You dogged every controller that came after.
That's a good point.
And shouldn't Nintendo be responsible for making controller upgrades instead of downgrades?
Yeah, they should. And I did not know there was a Nintendo Switch Pro controller.
Yes.
Don't admit that. Minus the point.
I don't care. I've only ever played with Joy-Con.
The power's getting to me.
Isn't it wonderful?
I'm feeling it.
It's amazing. But if they made the Pro controller and it's closely related to the Xbox controller, then they're just copying at that point. But if it works, it works.
They're copying near perfection.
Nearly.
I mean, for the longest time, the Steam controller was heralded as the most comfortable controller, And I mean, the other thing with the controller S is that it's allowed for so much more modularity and modifications, right? So you think about the Xbox Pro controllers, right? Being able to add the haptic back, back triggers and different things like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only that, when you think of, hey, I'm going to play my PC with a controller, 9 out of 10 times that person's playing it with an Xbox controller.
David, can I ask you what controller you use on PC, if you do use one?
I just use mouse and key.
Oh, wow. Okay. Just wondering.
My brother uses a PlayStation.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, that's why it's 9 out of 10, right? So so I think, it's just in general that controller has been just throughout time heralded, copied again, iterated on, reiterated on, right? It's the ultimate. It's the best controller. It's the best controller.
You both kind of like lifted up your controllers, and David, I know I docked you for dissing controllers.
Yeah.
I would like now for you to diss the controller S, and Jeremy for you to diss the GameCube. And this will probably determine the winner. You guys are so close in points. If you guys bring up good points about each other's controllers and why they're not the best,
I can go first. I mean, what the F is even up with the GameCube controller? I mean, it's got the little yellow dong and then the gray buttons around it. I mean, that's such a weird design. And when you look at it, you're saying, hey, this is one of the best Nintendo controllers. Yeah, because Nintendo routinely makes terrible peripherals. They hit it good with like the original Nintendo, Super Nintendo ones. I'll give them that for nostalgia. The N64 was a bleep fest of a controller.
Actually,
that doesn't make any bleep.
I'm gonna give you a point for that. I think it's the worst controller of all time. So
it's the worst controller of all time. Like, how am I supposed to hold it? Like
the joystick?
Am I supposed to hold it with just the joystick?
David did not pick the N60 controller though. So move on, please.
Good. And then you go from there. The Wii remote. I mean, motion capture, all that stuff, motion action. That's cool. But as a remote, no, the nunchucks. Come on,
stick with
man.
the GameCube, please.
I mean, but okay, sure. But going back to the GameCube, right? I mean, it had like these bulbous circles where the analogs were, that kind of like packed out a little from the rest of the design and stuff. The back triggers were kind of tucked away a little bit. It wasn't the easiest, right? And then a lot of the games that you played with that weren't Nintendo primary games, it was one of the worst layout optimized controllers you could play with. Pretty much every third-party developer or whatever that put a game on GameCube had the jankiest setups and layouts for that system because that controller was so foobar. I mean, the GameCube controller, I don't get it, man. It's just a matter of this is the best in a bad lot.
I give you a few points throughout that argument. I tend to think the GameCube controller is amazing. It's wholly unique compared to a lot of other controllers. It looks unique. and yet it's still comfortable. And it had, I think, the greatest premium controller ever in the Wavebird. So that's my opinion on it. Great pick by David. David, do you want to dog the controller S?
Yes. So mine's gonna be pretty brief. So bringing up the C stick, every controller on the right has the 4 main buttons, whether it's X, circle, triangle, square, or A, B, X, Y. Nintendo on the GameCube controller had the B, A, X, Y, right? But it also had the C stick, which is more buttons on the right side.
More buttons, more better.
Yeah.
1 point, David.
So Jeremy brought up a really great point. There's the elite controllers that Xbox has, whatever. You can modify and change everything. Why doesn't the GameCube controller have that? Because you don't need to modify it.
That doesn't make any sense. That's a ridiculous argument. All right. Okay.
They still make them to this day.
But going back to it, which controller would offer more accessibility for people that are playing games? The Xbox controller or that goofball of controller for the GameCube, right? The GameCube one obviously lends less to it. The layout of the buttons are weird. Yeah, you have that C stick right in the way. I mean, it's a ridiculous design that wouldn't even be able to compete with how much more accessible the Xbox controller is.
I will give you a win in the sense of now controllers that have 2 joysticks, and having a third on there randomly would not be sufficient. But it wasn't a great controller, and Nintendo
it was only 2 joysticks.
Well, it was, yeah. I'm saying, but like nowadays,
so it
every controller it could have, yeah,
right.
But if they were make it now, people have the head movement with one joystick and leg movement with the other. There would be a random third C-stick joystick. Yeah, so that'd be very confusing nowadays, and I agree. And the problem with Nintendo is, it's a new system. Let's make a new controller. Xbox is like, hey, a lot of people liked that original controller. Let's just modify it a little bit.
Or Nintendo says, hey, our Joy-Cons are so bad. Jeremy. Let's make a Pro controller that looks just like the Xbox S controller.
Well,
right?
I was going to say, I think that's a point for Jeremy. You saying that, hey, we're just going to modify our controller a little bit, because all they're doing is improving on something that was already close to perfection. So I think you made a point for Jeremy. I'm going to give him.
That's fine. That's very good. You're welcome, Jeremy. But what I'm saying is Xbox made the smart decision of they found a good controller and just kept modifying it. Nintendo was poor choices. They made a good controller and they're like, all right, it doesn't exist to us. It's a new system. Let's make new controls, which I understand that they went to the Wii and they kind of needed to. But that was just poor business right there. It was good that they brought it back, though, for the Switch.
I'm going to give you guys both 2 points at the end of this argument, because that was a very, very entertaining battle between you two, especially.
I didn't think I could talk about controllers for that long. I'll be honest with you.
You guys, that was where you guys were most fiery. So I really enjoyed that and I had a good time. Actually, more points makes it harder to add up.
You're supposed to be debating with us, Corey, not playing Vampire Survivors.
Oh, is that what's happening right now?
It just popped up.
That's my wife. She really enjoys that game. Shout out Vampire Survivors. Fantastic little $3 game. You should buy it. But yeah, I'm going to add these points. So I think we should do a stinger, Jeremy, and I will snap my fingers and have the point total.
3 hours later.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't as many points as I thought. You guys both fought valiantly. I don't know who won each debate. I know you each had a couple good wins in there, and you guys both came with good points, entire way. David, you did end up losing 3 points total. And Jeremy, you ended up losing 2 points total throughout this. But I will say, Jeremy, you ended with 25 points. And David, you ended with 22.
Yeah, baby. 0-3. Let's go.
It was only 0. Yeah, only 0-2. Only 0-2. It was very close. Could have went either way.
Yeah, you're right. 0-2.
I think the one that definitely pushed Jeremy over the edge was probably the Starfield debate. I feel like I gave him quite a few more points, which which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, he had a lot more to talk about it than I did.
Jeremy's definitely a Bethesda stan, so you can't help that. David, good arguing. Jeremy, great arguing.
Thank you.
Jeremy, do you want a final word because you're the winner? No one else gets one, not even me.
I mean, no, not really. You know what? I will say.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, do you want a final word or not? I will.
I was just gonna say, I had more for the Bethesda Starfield, and I lost my train of thought. So I could have really unloaded the chamber, but I.
Well, yeah, it was probably me like saying points all the time. 1 point, 2 points.
Hit it out of the park.
That's it for PvP, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this show. If you liked what you heard, check us out on our socials. We got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got TikTok. We have a Patreon now. We are at Thoughts and Players. Jeremy, back me up here.
Yeah.
Yes, at Thoughts and Players on Patreon. It has 3 different tiers. I think it's 2, 5, and 7. If you enjoyed what you heard and you want to help us out, maybe think about subscribing to that. If not, it's totally cool too. Maybe just a share or a like on any of our socials. That also helps us a lot. So thank you so much for listening. You guys have any final says? Final words?
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Congrats, Jeremy. Goodbye.
Peace.